G'day guys, welcome back to the show. This episode we're going to be taking the composition thumbnail that we did in our thumbnail video all the way to a finish. So I've got here the sketch that was the result of those thumbnail sketches we did. And I'm going in and I'm doing a tight line art. And I take a long time with this one this time because I've noticed actually that in a couple of my previous videos I've been saying things like, oh, I don't really recommend you do it this way. I would say you should probably start with the thumbnail and then do a line art and da-da-da-da-da. And it's kind of telling me that in these videos I seem to be rushing the process. And that's not great. I should be telling you guys the process from beginning to end so that you can develop good habits instead of, telling you what you should be doing but then doing something else. It makes no sense. So in this video, I've recorded the whole process from design, thumbnail sketching, line art, and then the whole painting, and it's going to play that in the background while I talk about the thought process that went into it. Now, if you came to this video from somewhere else and you want to start at the very beginning, go back to my YouTube channel and find the video that's called, it's got some dumb name, I think it's Composition, Primordial Slime, and Opposable Thumbnails. It doesn't make much sense. I was in a bit of a mood, okay? Yeah, that will begin the process of the whole thing, and I'll go over the story, but I'll just sort of recap that in very brief terms. So basically this sketch, I wanted to get across the idea of like a strange little critter, like some sort of creature that lives in a beautiful verdant forest. He's kind of grey and lifeless, kind of like a golem character. And he's going around in the forest stealing all of the spirits from the forest because he's sort of fascinated by the beautiful life that surrounds him. So that was the idea, the concept behind the image. And so I tried to arrange my composition in such a way that it could tell that story. And if you want all of that process, like I said, go to the other video. For this one, we're going to go straight into what I'm doing here with the tight line drawing. Now, this is just a part of the process that I have found works well for me. It stops me from getting too distracted. It's like drawing myself a detailed map for the whole drawing. I mean, there are so many ways to get lost while trying to create an image because you have ultimate freedom. So I require, for me, to have some kind of limitations. Otherwise, I will just mess around forever. So I actually went and made a list, like a physical list, of all the different steps that I go through to complete an image. And I've come down to ideation, thumbnail, line art, block in, forms, refine, relax, and repeat. So I'm going to go into detail on all of these different things, but this is the basic creative process that I use. So the ideation phase is where you come up with something that you care about enough to invest the time to do. And it's important that you need to care about it enough. Many times when I was starting out, I would just start drawing something like mushy shapes because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And if you fail enough times doing that, it can be really demoralizing. So it's good to go in with a plan, like an idea that excites you. And it's a really good idea to make it something personal that you care about, something that you're feeling at the time, something that's on your mind, and try and work these metaphors and things that are important to you into the art. And I don't want to give the wrong impression, as if to say that, your artwork must be about the dichotomy of man and all these profound statements about reality and life and love and all. It doesn't need to be that. That's not what I'm getting at. You can just look in at yourself and say, what am I feeling at the moment? Or what's something I'm interested in at the moment? What's been on my mind? And how can I tell a story about that feeling with the art that just gets me that little bit more personally invested in it? So I care enough to give it that little bit something extra and make it that little bit more special. Doing this is going to help you come up with nice, unique ideas. Because if you think about the creative process as a whole, before you've started putting pen on paper, you have literally infinite possibilities of things to create. Okay, it's a daunting thing. So you need to then break it down to several elements that you know you want in that image and that you need to tell your story. That's the ideation phase. Then we come to the thumbnail phase. Now the thumbnail phase is where you take all of those things that you want in your image and you begin to play with how they arrange themselves on the sheet, because you only have so much space within your image and your composition, and you need the shapes to relate to one another in an interesting way. You need it to look good, and you need to have the correct information being displayed in prominent places and having attention drawn to them. So during the thumbnail stage, just do a bunch of tiny crappy drawings to figure out how you're going to arrange the image. And once you have that thumbnail done and you're happy with how all of the shapes relate to one another and where the story is taking place and that it is being clearly conveyed, you can then move on to the line art phase. Now the line art phase is what you've been watching while I've been talking up until now. Basically it started with the thumbnail, and then on top of that thumbnail I started refining everything, and the purpose of this is to solve as many problems as possible right at the beginning of the process, because if you leave these things unrefined until later, it can really come back and bite you. If you need to figure out some anatomy and things like that, it can be so hard to change when you have complicated layer structures, all these different lights hitting a rendered object, and you realize that the hand is busted like really late in the process. That can take you so long to fix. In this phase, you can make changes so quickly by just erasing out the line art and redoing it. Okay, you can bring up reference and look at how joints operate, what sort of plants and things you want in your scene, all sorts of things, and it's so quick to change. Use that to your advantage. This is the time to solve the problems. And once I'm happy with the line art, I move into the blocking in phase. And the first thing I do there is break everything apart into layers. So I'll have a foreground, midground, background, and my focal point, and maybe some other little bits and pieces that are important to have on their own individual layer. Things that I want to work on individually without interfering with other parts. And once they're all separated out, I'll add a basic local color to each of those things. Once you've got this local color in, I recommend just playing with those colors a bit, because it's all broken up onto separate layers like the foreground, background, midground. Just select those different elements and press, I think it's Control U to bring up the hue and saturation slider, and just sort of mess with the colors a little bit and see if you can get some interesting palettes going. Something that seems like a good foundation that could have a nice harmony to it. So now that these colors are blocked in and we're happy with the really basic underpainting, it's time to turn the forms. It's time to make everything 3D, because at the moment it's all just cell shaded. At this point, I create another layer on top of everything that is a multiply layer, and I fill it with like a darker value, and then I make a clipping mask, and I just sort of paint in and out the shadows until I'm happy. Because a multiply layer applied above all of your other colors will make those colors, those local colors, darker or lighter. If you want a bit more of a in-depth explanation of this technique, go through my Goblin Design series. I've got a series of videos where I explain exactly how I do this. But yeah, basically what I'm doing is dividing all of my forms up into the side that is receiving light and the side that is in shadow. Once I've got things divided into basic light and dark groups, you have your light and your shadow side for things. You've turned the forms. Now things are reading as 3D objects. It also means that you will at that time have chosen a lighting direction. These are big things that are happening from basically taking very small steps. Okay, you've established the whole shot now with just tiny steps forward. If you look back to the beginning now, you've come a very long way, and everything's really manageable up to this point. Nothing has been too difficult. So now it's time for the refine stage. Now the refine stage is the longest, most arduous and difficult part of the process. You've got a great foundation here, but it looks like crap. It's time to put in all of the understanding that you have for how to render forms, all of that balancing the composition and stuff. This is the time where you finish the piece. Okay, you need to take it to a point where you're happy to call it done. Because it's a lot to do, I'll generally try and work on the focal point areas first. And then when I'm sort of a bit mentally worn out from doing all of this hard crunching on the face and stuff like that, which can be difficult to get right, like these high stakes areas, I might move to the background for a while just to calm down and relax, because adding really basic lighting information into a tree in the background is pretty easy and relaxing compared to trying to get the smile right on a creepy character or something. Just little tricks that I've picked up over the course of working for so long to keep your mind a little bit fresh. It can be quite difficult to just work on difficult parts of the drawing for an entire day. You'll get really burned out. So yeah, this is the trickiest part to define, because this is where you make a whole bunch of small decisions that add up to finishing the piece. You've done all of this foundation stuff, okay? You've put in all of the work. You've solved most of the problems. But now you need to make it exciting, because it all looks kind of flat and unfinished. The colors aren't quite there. The forms don't quite read properly. Things don't quite separate from one another. The facial expression isn't quite right. Everything is just not quite there, and you need to refine everything. It's a scary time in the process because it looks like crap. Everything looks crap. It's a crap version of the final. It's easy to get lost here if you don't have the proper understanding. It's easy to feel like there's too much to do and it's overwhelming. But this is the whole part that's most character building, right? It's the longest part of the process. And it's that sense of discovery that you have to go through every single time that you make something, where you are trying to create something from nothing, and there is a chance that it's going to fail, and you don't know if it's all going to come together. And being able to exist within that doubt and uncertainty is the most difficult part of art. It's the thing that feels uncomfortable. You don't want to be in that space. You don't want to be wondering if you are wasting your time, right? But the only way to reduce the amount of time that you spend there, or to be able to become comfortable existing there, is to be in that place all the time, right? Challenging yourself, pushing the limits of what you can do. Having faith in yourself that you are going to solve these problems and it's all going to come together and you're going to learn from it. Because then the next time that you find yourself in this same place where you've got many hours of refining this image to go until it looks good, you will have a wealth of experience behind you where you can say, I've been in this place before and it all worked out fine in the end, right? If you just keep throwing away everything because it starts to get too hard and get into the habit of just producing a bunch of speed paintings that are really gestural and don't have any real information in them, you can learn about shape language and stuff like that, composition, some pretty important things, sure, but there's a large part of the process that you are completely missing out on. And if all you want to do is do speed paintings and chuck them up on Instagram and get a bunch of likes, sure, you can do that as long as you don't really, expect a job out of it or something. If you want to work in the industry, you're going to have to work a lot harder than that, because there are people out there who are working super hard. Think of it like you go into the gym. You rock up, you get changed into your gym clothes, you walk over to the treadmill, you run for 5 minutes, and then you go over to the weights rack, you pick up the weight, take a selfie, put it on Instagram, hitting the gym hard, and then you just go home, right? Without doing the hard work. There's all these other people there pumping iron and they're getting super ripped. You not so much, but you got that satisfaction of posting something on Instagram. People are like, oh wow, I wish I had the motivation to go to the gym. And you're all like, no sweat, bro. You can do it too. Just gotta get dedicated. Oh, man. I feel like I'm being a bit mean, but, I've been there. I've been the person who just did a bunch of speed paintings because I was too scared to plunge into the further, more difficult work. It's uncomfortable to be there. But if you do put yourself in that difficult position and push through all the feelings that are telling you to quit or do something else or drop the piece, if you can fight all of that, eventually, at least for myself, I usually end up just putting down a stroke of like a different color somewhere or something like that, or changing a facial expression. And then I just get this feeling like, oh yes, that was the thing that this piece was missing all along. And you realize that you've just solved the last difficult problem that you didn't know how you were going to approach. And after that happens, you're in the relax phase. You've solved the image. Now you just have to keep on going. It might be 5 hours or something left in the image, but you just have to keep going, balancing things, tweaking it, and trying to squeeze as much out of it as you can. And once that's done, you're going to have a finished piece that you're proud of because you really worked hard on it. But guess what? You're not done, because the next step is the most important and difficult step there is. Repeat. You're never going to be done. Art is a process. It's a process of learning, understanding, and developing, of pushing your boundaries, trying to constantly evolve. And you can only do that if you continue to produce work. Your tool palette will expand. Your skills will expand. The things that you want to say will expand. Maybe they'll change completely. Art is a mirror. It reflects you. As you grow, so does your art. It's a special voice. It connects with people without words. It's important. Keep going.